Here I have a Sony CFD-S28L, just a little CD boombox thing, fairly modern. I'm not sure what year this would have come out, maybe 90s, 2000s, probably getting into the 2000s I guess. The problem with this is supposedly no power, though it has after a while. It has actually come up with a little bit of a display, but I couldn't get it to turn on at all. And when I press that, it's kind of fading up. Yeah, it's gone completely now. It does have a bit of a crack in the front. I don't know if that's anything to do with it. So it looks like after sitting there for a while it came up with a display for a moment until I press the power button. But basically this thing won't turn on and run. Doesn't seem to be anything coming from the cassette player or anything like that. I think this does run on batteries. No batteries in it. So I'll have to pull the cover off and have a look and see if I can work out what's going on with this. Oh, we've got our display back again. So that seems to... Oh, it's fading. Oh, look at that. It's actually cycling on and off on its own. Well, look at that. That's what it is. So I guess, well, I don't know if that's a clock. That display probably does more than just... We've got time sets. So it's more than just a CD player display or FM tuner frequency display. But yeah, that's odd. It seems to come on when it feels like it and then disappear again. So I assume it may be some sort of power supply problem, but I'll pull it to bits and we'll have a look and see what's going on. Now, so all the screws are marked with little arrows in this one, 3 at the bottom, 2 in the... I've got the screw markings out. Oh, that one's got it next to it. 2 in the battery compartment, 2 up the top, and the front seems to just come off after that. So there's not too much to it. So it looks like we can unplug that front. So we've got our buttons and a headphone socket, so that'll probably disconnect the speakers. Well, the speakers of course are connected to the same connector, so I might even get rid of that altogether. Get rid of the front. And we have a power section down in here, so that'll be the first thing to check. The plug's a little loose on that already. Hopefully Sony have actually labelled it. They often do, but I'm not sure if they're useful things or not. But I might even just... Oh yeah, I can read that. What does it say on there? SW3 AC high UCOM ground VCC by the look of it. So it might mean that the microprocessor seems awfully loose. I think the transformer's actually loose, so that crack in the display may well be because this unit's been dropped. So I think in that case I'll actually unscrew this power board after all, since it's only the power socket holding it in. So we might be looking at a unit that's got a cracked circuit board or something. Let's take there's an other connector here anyway. I'll pull the 2 plugs out of that power board and out it comes. Now, another thing often to check in these is the power socket. Got 2 big terminals which are AC, go into the transformer, but then we've got 3 other terminals here which actually switch between AC and DC. So when the batteries are connected, that'll disconnect, and that's often a place where, oh yeah, there is dry as. I might have to do a close up of that, but this I can already, oh yeah, the actual, and the AC's actually broken. 1 track's broken. So all the pins on this are moving except for one of the AC ones. So that may be all that's wrong with it. I'll see if I can get the whole... Pause the camera and we'll get a close-up of that. Okay, I think that's about as close as I can get this and keep it in focus. Hopefully it's in focus, but we've got our power socket. And if I move that around, you can see it's moving a bit. Now this second pad here, that's one of the 240 volt ones. is actually, if I press on the socket, that's actually lifting up. Might be a bit hard to see there, but that's actually broken the copper track. Hopefully you can see that lifting up, and there's a bit of a gap underneath it. This one, the bottom one's still soldered nicely, so that's okay. And these 3 pins, which switch between battery and 240 volts, basically, the transformer output will go through here, or somewhere after it's been rectified and regulated maybe. And also the battery voltage will come up from the battery terminals, and depending whether there's each time we put a plug into this socket, it presses on this plastic bit here. If I can get the screwdriver in the right spot. Well, it doesn't seem to be pressing all that well. Usually this bit just pushes in, or does it go in? Oh, it goes in that way. It's a bit different to the old ones, but most of these ghetto blaster type things you'll find, if they run on AC and DC, there's some sort of switch in here. This one tilts over, that little grey bit in there, and that operates these contacts. The middle one's usually the common, which will go to the unit. Oh no, it's actually commons on, look, according to this, it's on one end. And that'll be switched to, when the plug's out, it'll be switched to one labelled battery. So the batteries will connect through if there's any in there. As soon as we plug the plug in, the 240 volt lead, it'll actually push that little switch in there, and we'll connect to this, looks like rectifier or something, which will be your mains coming through the transformer. So that's probably all that's going to be wrong with this unit. I don't know why that display was managing to occasionally come up, but most likely this is certainly going to have to be fixed. Certainly explains why we probably get no AC voltage at all. Maybe just a tiny bit was getting through, I don't know what's going on there. But what I'll have to do is clean this green lacquer off the board, and I'll solder a nice bit of wire onto this bit of circuit board, tin up the copper, and we'll wrap it around that pin, solder on this, because this is going to be mechanically moved around even though it's screwed to the chassis. The other problem I've got is this transformer's now broken off, so I might be able to get some longer screws into what's left of the mounts on the actual case there, because we don't want this thing flapping around in the breeze, because a lot of the weight's going to be on the socket and it's just going to break it again. So I really need, this is quite a heavy transformer, that needs to be screwed down and prevented from moving, because the only thing holding it in pretty much at the moment, besides it slotting into the case a bit, is going to be this socket. So that's going to have, this socket's going to have all the weight of that on there. Even though putting the plug in won't move the socket necessarily, we've still got this whole weight flapping around. But anyway, we'll get this connected up. I'll resolder those 3 pins. We'll put a bridging bit of solid copper wire on there, and hopefully that'll get the thing at least running. Then I'll have to work out what mechanical issues I've got to deal with. Like I say, I should have some longer screws. These are just the standard sort of plastic thread screws like it's got in the case, and I've got plenty of old ones out of things. So if I put some longer ones in through the same mounts here, I could even possibly glue those mounts on just to hold them in place, but they won't. There's no glue that's probably going to hold this much weight. Quite likely they'll just break off again with the same length screws. But again, for safety reasons, we don't want the screws, if I screw them in enough, they'll probably come out through the back panel. Actually, looking in the cases, great big deep, we've got like almost 40-50 mils of plastic with round bits with holes in them. So I can put great big long screws in there if need be, so that's a good sign. So Sony have saved me there, so they're not right up against the back panel. So I should be able to take these out. I'll put these mounts back in place, probably just screw them on, I won't even bother gluing them. Run a screw through to where these ones are, and then I'll set the whole unit in, and then keep screwing in some longer screws, and that should actually fix this thing perfectly, hopefully. So I'll get this soldered up. Just checking the board for any other dry joints or anything. If it's been dropped, you don't know what you're going to find. There could be other damage, but I'll at least quickly get this going for now, and then we can see if the unit's got any other problems. So I do have a tool somewhere for scraping this stuff off. They make like a fiberglass pen, but you can even just use a screwdriver, or the like, it's a bit slower. And we need to get that green lacquer off and all the screen printing and stuff. throw that away, that ought to have scraped off. And that's plenty really. Get my soldering iron on. I've always forget to turn that on, so I'll be back in a sec. I've got my soldering iron warmed up now, so what I'll do is I'll start by tinning this, just applying some solder to this copper where I've cleaned the lacquer off. Get that all covered up so there's no copper showing, it's just solder. And it looks like there's still a little bit of lacquer on the other side. I could just bridge over this, especially if I scrape that last little bit of lacquer out, but that's not really good enough because you want this to be mechanically strong as well as electrically good. So I've got a bit of a roll of old phone cable, just single strand. It's actually insulated, which I don't want, so I just strip a bit off, because this is like 1,000 meters or God knows what of cable. Save me buying the more expensive tin copper wire that you can get from new. And what I'll do, I'll just loop that around a bit, tin it. Even though it's pretty well tinned, this wire, but it does need to get a bit more solder on it. And then what I can do is melt around that pin. And just push that on so it's, whoops, what on earth happened there? The socket must have actually pushed right through, which doesn't usually happen, so I don't know how well that other pin's held on, but anyway, I'll have to be careful not to push it through. I mustn't have this quite opened up enough. I'll just let that sit for a second. Yeah, get the socket back through. This is going to be more difficult than it should. There we go. Let's get this wire, get one side of it soldered to that big bit of track that I cleared, and I'm going to solder it right over to these other pads. Just to make sure, because like I say, this is partly about making it mechanically strong. Socket's still sitting in place correct. I'll just hold that. I'll get this other side in place, try and wrap it so it's reasonably tight around the pin of the socket. Try not to move too much, and then I'll give it another coat of solder and make sure none of this is dry or anything. Making sure I don't move anything until it's fully set. And that's actually about all that needs. So the socket's already nice and solid, much better than it was. And then I've just got to go over these pins. They should all be alright, they've just broken free from the solder, but just put plenty of fresh solder on there, making sure it seems to be sticking to the pin. I might even go over those, they're only wires. And just check all these connectors and stuff on this board. They look pretty good, everything looks good. The transformer, don't think it's got too much damage or too much force. So now I'll just have to reposition the camera, but we'll just temporarily hook this up to the unit and see what it does, see if we've actually got it going again. And if we have, it'll be a matter of fixing these mounts for the transformer and it should be good again. So get the board back in place. There's a white connector there. And a red connector. And I might even put one screw back in the socket just so I'm not having to touch anything, even though it's all low voltage on this side. But I just want to be able to plug the cord in, and I'd prefer better not to touch it if you can avoid it. even though you can have it turned off while you plug it in. Okay, we've got power. At least the display's come on. I've got no front panel, so I'm not going to be able to turn that on anyway, but... Oh, we've got play on the cassette. Took a little while to cut in. So that's a lot more than we had before. It's even saying tape. So it must automatically select it as soon as I press that, so I'll turn it off. Get our front panel back on. Plug the speakers back in to the headphone socket, and our little, more importantly, our controls, so we can actually do stuff with it. I might as well set that back in place. Reapply power. Yeah, when we hit operate, we've got CD. I guess we can chuck something in there. See if that works. I can hear the motor's going, it's spinning it up. Yep, it's found a disc. Table of contents. Okay, that seems to work. Tape. Yep, that seems to be going. And we'll get a function we can change to, oh yeah, we've got radio band there. And do we have a, that is positive tune, looks like we have to hold it. Yes, that seems to work. Go to AM, that's got long wave as well. So that all seems to be working. But yeah, that crack on the front was a bit of a dead giveaway. Also the fact this is not, these Sonys aren't the greatest ones, these later ones, but the fact that it had failed to have power on something like this is pretty rare that the power section will fail, so it's also a sign that it may have been dropped or something like that, or the socket's been used a lot and broken the connection. Oops, I've got the radio back. Now if you even press the function buttons, it turns on. Even if you turn it off, so it's more an off button. But yeah, well, this sort of thing, if you get a power, it just turned on again. Did I bump something? I think I moved it. Could be one of these buttons is a bit iffy. Probably doesn't take a lot to turn it on. Yeah, seem to turn on its own, but anyway, I think we'll call that fixed in the electrical sense. Yeah, the display's actually staying on even with the power completely off. So maybe there's some sort of capacitor staying charged there. But I don't think it'll worry anything, me plugging it in and out. So now what I have to do is try and fix the mounting of this transformer, because it's basically loose in there, that whole board's loose, and so eventually that'll break the connections to that socket again potentially, depending whether this gets moved around much or not, but it's not really much good like that. So, oh, forgot to unplug the power cord. really done before I move the socket loose. But yeah, that's all pretty solid now. So we've got these broken off mounts, and my pliers have gone missing. Never stay in one spot for long. Oh, that's actually broken in half. Not surprising, there's not much left of it. I prefer if they don't break, because I'm going to need to refit these or something equivalent to them. Yeah, very tight. Now what I should really do, let's see, where does that go in like that? So that was that one. I might just keep them in the same place. Probably doesn't make a lot of difference. They're all about the same length. They've all snapped off. If I was going to glue them on, all snapped off at the same place. If I was going to glue them back to the same bit, it would pay to get the right one in the right place. But I think there's a lot of difference in length. As long as this thing's in reasonably tight, it'll do. But it would be nice to, that one's broken as well. No surprises there. I could probably just melt these back together for now, although when I put them on the screw they're likely to break again. Could be worth a try though, just my super glue's all dried up, which would have been good for doing this. So I've got to get some more super glue. But this might just do for the moment, just to hold them together. But when I put a screw in there, it may also just burst apart again. I could just put a cable tie around them or something, which might have to do. Probably a better idea anyway, because they may fall out otherwise later. Now I've messed up where they were. I think that was how they went. Board's been bent a little bit, I think. So what I need is these original screws. I need something longer. Now that's the sort of thing I want. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. I don't know what these came out of. I hope I don't need them for something. They might be just what I wanted. Some bag of random screws, which hopefully are things I've chucked away. That can probably go back in there. These might be a tad thinner, which actually will work out well because it won't burst these open, hopefully. But it should cut into the plastic inside the case. With no problems, since it hasn't had a screw in it previously. Geez, they are tight. Don't know why these are so tight even on that. I can't see these ones that are broken in half staying back together. All staying together. Ugh. Yeah, that is really... Don't know if they're a different thread or what. I probably should actually drill these ones. Don't know if I can drill these ones out. But a better option might be to actually drill these out just to use them as hollow mounting bits. Yeah, that's unbelievable. It's completely stuck now. Actually need some better pliers. Okay, found some pliers. So I'll probably have to hold them in some pliers and try and put like a 1/8 drill bit down there. Okay, a rather rivet infested drill bit. Put that on fast. See if I can get this to hold. Ah, and it just collapsed on me. Before I even started. So they are rather weak, these things. Maybe I'll have to make some actual proper mounts. Yeah, no, they're just going to disintegrate, so that plastic's pretty brittle. So I need some mounts, or a little bit of tubing or something. So these metal standoffs might just about be perfect, pretty much the same length. Have I got enough of them though? Or could I use these? Are probably a little bit long. Yeah, they would have been near perfect if they weren't too long. Though maybe I can get away with them. There's another one, same as that. And I've got a couple of bigger ones. They're only under the transformer, so they should all be, yeah, they're pretty much the same length. It looks like we might be using them, but getting them all to stay in there is the next problem. Because they're loose on the screws, it's how do I drop it into the unit? I have to go in sideways or something. Because if I try and drop that in, everything's just going to fall to bits. You probably could use a bit of blue tack or something if you wanted to, which I don't really like doing. But they're going to need drop off on their own. So down in the hole here, we've got these 4 bits on this sort of rectangular piece. That's where the mounts broke off. So they've got like here maybe 40 mils down until they hit the back of the case. There's plenty of room for a longer screw, thankfully. So with those standoffs sitting on there, if I can get them all in there, I have to do this on its side or something, which is going to make it hard to line everything up. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. That's going to be very difficult. I almost need to glue these down first. Because yeah, if anyone pulls this apart again, they're going to get a bit of a surprise. Yeah, these aren't even going to sit on the screws, they flop around in the holes so much. Yeah, no, it's going to be a real pain. And one of course trying to get away. It's the other option is, do I have some sort of washers that'll screw on? Yeah, it needs some very small. If you could find some of these sort of fibre washers that are actually small enough, you could screw one up the, like this plastic one here. Yeah, that's the sort of thing. That'll sort of hold it on. I don't know if any of these anti-shake or shake-proof or whatever they call them washers. Don't think they're small enough. Those are too big. Oh, actually no, they're perfect. How many have I got though? That plastic one might even work. These are little split washer things, seem to hold on quite nicely. But they're plenty loose enough, they'll, when I tighten the screws up, they'll move along the screw. Of course that plastic one gives way as soon as I move it. Even though it wouldn't come off by hand. That might be the perfect little... Oh, I saw more of them in here. Ah, that one's obviously different because it doesn't screw on. And there's the little one. Come here. Yeah, that one's tight enough that it actually screws up the threads. It's still going to be a bit fiddly, but if I can get these standoffs to stay in place. That one's already moving. So they seem to hold in place, and then as soon as you vibrate them a bit, they fall off again. If I can keep them up the end there like that. I don't know if any of these little shake-proof washers will screw on. Yeah, that one does. But then it'll probably go loose as soon as I let go of it. Yeah, that might work. No, that one comes off. Where'd you go? Feels like it's going to work. Not sure, it might just do the job. No. Thought it might be loose, that one. Still need one more. Where'd that go? Very hard to pick them, they all look about the same. Some fit, some don't. Rather unpredictable. No. Don't think that'll work, but maybe it will. You just can't pick them. That is rather weird. That is very weird. That's just going to fall off, I think, even though it... No. Oh, yeah, there it goes. Just when you think it's going to stay there, it doesn't. That one. Ah, got the wrong one. I don't know what's with this screw, but I cannot get anything to work on this one. That is doing weird stuff and not going straight at all. It's really weird. But if it holds it there, which so far it is, stop bumping everything would be good. I heard something move. I hope one hasn't come loose, but it's bound to have. So close. Come on. Oh yeah, that's it, that's that one. Just want to get them all started. Is that going in? I think it is. That's the one that dropped. Just hope it's got in. Oh, they're in the holes, I think, so that's good. Plastic sounds a bit like it's breaking or something, but hopefully not. Yeah, the only problem is these washers are actually so good they're kind of causing the mounts to screw up to the screws and make it a bit too tight, but it seems to be slowly lowering in there. Not there yet. No, that one's loose, it should go in. Yeah, something just let go, so that's good. Now, I don't want to screw this down too tight, I just want to get that socket in place. That screw is not too heavy. for some reason. We seem to be biting in nicely to the base of the case, maybe even a bit too much. It's going to take me a while to get it in there. Now that's pretty good. Might have to screw this socket in just so I know where the socket's at. And then be careful not to overdo the transformer. Because we don't want the transformer actually so tight that it's then pushing against the socket and its connections. As long as it can't really move around much in case this thing gets shocked. Yeah, that's perfect. Transformer's bottomed out at the same time as the socket. If I can get two sides of it bottom out. It's still a little loose there. I don't want to tighten this up with a battery drill, just in case it puts too much force on something. That's very solid. Is that one up tight? I don't think we're putting force on the socket. I think that's about perfect. Might just loosen the socket. Make sure it feels like it's not too tight in there. I think that's still moving just ever so slightly. Yeah, the head on one of these screws isn't too good. Got some rust in it or something, so it's a little hard to do up, but I think it's not fully in, but I think that'll do. Probably should have plugged that white wire in, but I can get it in anyway. Just a bit deeper than I'd like. Oops. Transformer's very solid. Make sure the socket looks right, it's in position right. Get rid of that. Oops, wrong thing I put them in. Get rid of those washers. Get rid of all this broken stuff. Go in the rubbish. And we should have about 4 of those screws left over. Off the back. Plug everything back in here. And you need one of these nice long screwdrivers on these stereos. That's why I own a big long Phillips head, just to get down in these deep holes. Some of the Phillips ones and stuff have Torx head screws. I think they're T10s or something, so they were a pain because you had to buy like a $20 or $30 screwdriver just to get into them. And you didn't see that many of them. Some of those screws, we've got 3 in the bottom. sort of depth a screwdriver has to go into when it's inside the case as well, in those holes in the back. Because all these modern ones, they basically have a very thin front panel that's screwed right through the depth of the back, and all the electronics is in the back. Mainly since they put CD players in them, I think they got a lot deeper than the old cassette boom boxes. Battery cover back on, power on. Where was that channel? 87.8 or something? Just check everything works again. Always the main thing to test these things is test every function. Make sure you haven't left anything disconnected or something silly. Oops. Usually pays to run the CD player fairly far out in the tracks because they plough up more at the end. Like this one seems to have lost the plot. Sometimes it's only a burnt disc, so it may have lost the plot a bit on that. It's a little slow to read it at the best of times. Doesn't like track 11. This CD may be faulty anyway, that's probably why I've used it as a test disc. But CD player, because the disc gets more eccentric as it gets towards, the disc starts reading in the centre and moves outwards. Geez, that one's rough, but good for testing things. And so as it gets towards the outer tracks, like the later tracks on the disc, there's more wobble and stuff, so it's a good place to test CD players to see if they actually read alright. I'd say this one's not the best reader of the lot. That does get there in the end. Yeah, it's having a bit of trouble at the end, but I'll have to find a good CD to put in it and test it properly, but it seems to be working alright. And especially if the unit's been dropped, usually pays to check everything. Just because a customer bought it in for no power doesn't mean they want to get it home and find out something else doesn't work, but that all seems to be going. So that's all it was just been dropped. Power transformer had come loose. I mean, that could have happened a while ago, but with a bit of moving around, that eventually broke the connections and made dry solder joints on the thing. So not the most uncommon thing, so my neighbour will be happy to get that back. But yeah, generally quite a nice simple little job. The display does stay on even with no power, no batteries, no nothing. But thanks for watching.